Met my Aunt Dorothy Sue, that's my mom's sister. Her husband at the time, a guy named Jesse Wright. This is the first stage of my life back in the early 70s, and the guy that I think made an impact on my life, even though I never really knew this man very well. His name was Jesse Wright. He was Dorothy Sue's husband at the time. And he was a Church of Christ preacher. And he met with my parents off and on, and then back in the summer of 73, he talked them both into starting to attend Church of Christ. And they both had gotten baptized and started attending church. At the time, they were living in the Tuscaloosa, Alabama area. So they started attending, the Cottondale Church. Is that where you started? So, and what's interesting about Jesse Wright was he was a Methodist preacher for a really long time, and then he converted over and became a Church of Christ preacher. Did that for a little while, and then towards the tail end of his life, he was a Baptist preacher for a long time. So, but there was a window of time there where he was a Church of Christ preacher, and during that time, he spent time with my parents and converted them to the Church of Christ. So what's really interesting about that story to me is there was a window of time when this man named Jesse converted my parents to start going to a Church of Christ, and that decision that he made and talking to my parents and the decision my parents made 6 years before I was born had a definite influence on my life and really started to kind of direct the path that my life would go on. So that's kind of the first part of my life is before I was born. If you look at Psalm chapter 139, verses 13 through 16, it says, "For you formed my inward parts, you knitted me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works, my soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from you. When I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth, your eyes saw my unformed substance. In your book were written, every one of them, the days that were formed for me, when as yet there was none of them." And I like that scripture just because it talks about how God knew you before you were born. And I always look back at that moment in time when that decision was made by my parents and just how that shaped my life today. So let's skip a little bit ahead. And I've got a rough outline tonight that I'm going by. I usually will type up what I'm going to say word for word, and I'll just stand up here and read it word for word. But tonight I said I'm going to go a little bit different. I'm going to step even more out of my comfort zone. I'm just going to make an outline. It's already throwing me off because I'm trying to look and read what I'm supposed to say, and it's not down there. So I've got an outline tonight I'm going to go by. So we're going to skip ahead a little bit to my childhood. I was born in 1979. I don't remember the 70s very well. I was born in November 1979, but I'll tell people that I lived in the 70s. But I was raised in a Christian home. When I was 3 years old, we moved from the Tuscaloosa area to Tupelo, Mississippi, and that's where I was raised, in Tupelo, Mississippi. Lived there my entire youth, graduated high school from Tupelo High School. And so the biggest influences, obviously, early in my life were my parents. A lot of my memories of my parents were going to church. We spent a lot of time with the church, with the youth group. I grew up going to a camp in Hamilton, Alabama called Maywood Christian Camp. I think the first year I went there, I was 7 years old, and I went all the way until I graduated high school. Even got to go back a few years when I was in college too. But I grew up going to Maywood Christian Camp, and I'll kind of come back to that in just a few minutes. So I was raised in a Christian home by my parents, and one thing that really, I look back on it, and I didn't have a whole lot of memories of my childhood when it comes to my brother. A lot of you probably don't know a ton about my older brother. I have a brother that just turned 50 last week. So he's currently in prison. And a lot of you probably don't know a ton about my brother. And honestly, I think some of the stuff I blocked out when I was younger, but I'll relive some of those stories sometimes with my parents, and they'll tell me some stuff, and I'll kind of remember things that happened when I was younger. But some of the stuff I remember when I was around 7th grade or so, I still remember on the weekends going up to visit him in rehabs and going through counseling sessions and stuff. And I think a lot of decisions that I made when I was younger, when I a teenager and on in high school and stuff. I think a lot of that has to do with me. And I wasn't thinking about it at the time, but I think a lot of the decisions I made back then, because I was a pretty decent kid. I stayed out of trouble. A lot of decisions I made about the friends that I chose, because my parents started harping on me a lot more. And I think a lot of it was because of my brother, just making sure that I choose good friends, making sure that I'm always surrounding myself with good people. And that was something I think they realized that my brother made some poor decisions early on in his life, and he didn't choose the right friends. He hung out with the wrong kind of people. So that was something that they stressed with me a lot growing up, was choosing the right friends, making good decisions. So I look back on my youth, and I think my brother had a big impact on me just because I saw the path that he took. And even though I wasn't really directly thinking about it at the time, I think that subconsciously I knew that I had to take a different path than he did. I knew I had to make some different choices that he didn't make when he was younger. So it's kind of hard to think about my childhood without thinking about the impact that his life had on mine and how it kind of forced me to look at things differently. But some of the good stuff I look back on, when I look at my parents growing up, I have memories of the different jobs. My dad's always worked at Kroger as long as I can remember. But he never just worked at Kroger. He was always doing 2 or 3 jobs at the same time, all the time. And it wasn't until just recently, as I've grown up and had a family, that I really started to appreciate the stuff he did. He was umpiring baseball games all the time. He was stocking shelves at the grocery store when he got off work for different companies. He used to work for the different churches that we grew up going to, cleaning the buildings, anything that's church needed. He always had 2 or 3 jobs, always growing up. I'm not sure if there were many times growing up that he only had one job. He was always doing whatever he could to provide for us. And I remember Mom being a school teacher and worked for the dentist's office. And I remember, I guess it was elementary school, maybe I was a little bit older, when I would get dropped off the bus at home. Most days when I got dropped off, I would walk into the kitchen, the dining room table. There'd be 2 or 3 ladies sitting there getting facials where she was selling Mary Kay. That's a very vivid memory I have, is walking into the living room and just trying to sneak by the table, because I have these women just sitting there with their faces covered in some type of skincare product. But I remember she was working really hard because she wanted to get one of those Grand Ams she could drive. And maybe if she worked super hard, she'd get a pink Cadillac to drive. But I remember her selling Mary Kay for a long time. But that's one thing I really remember about my parents a lot, is they worked so hard for me. They were such great examples for me. I've been married over 50 years now. So it's a blessing to have them in my life, an example that they set for me. So they moved here back in 2020. So it's been great having them, living close by. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's okay, but I like having them. Most days I like having them living 10 minutes away. So it's been a blessing to have them come back and to be more part of our life, and to get to go to church with them too. So that was kind of my early childhood and some of the things that affected my faith. So now we'll go on into college. So in 1998, I started going to Mississippi State. Yeah, I knew you had to tell me. It's probably, without a doubt, the greatest university in Mississippi. There's another school up north, I can't remember the name of it. But Mississippi State University. I was there in 1998. And my first semester there, I don't even know if I ever told Mom and Dad this, so this might be the first time they heard this. I did not walk through the doors of Starville Church of Christ. It was a good 10-minute walk from my dorm room. Never went to the doors that entire first semester there. When I went home, I was going to church with my parents. But when I was in Starville, I slept in every single Sunday. Never went Wednesday night, never went Sunday night. So I was very lazy. I was not faithful. Just kind of fell off the wagon. When it was my choice to get up and go to church in the morning, I chose not to go. I was 18, 19 years old. I remember the second semester, I was trying to remember how this guy contacted me, because this was spring of 1999. I was like, he didn't text me, because I didn't get a cell phone for another couple of years. Spring of '99, I was like, he didn't email me because I think I just got my first email address. We had just gotten the internet in the dorm my second semester. I think Ole Miss got internet about 5 years later. But I was like, how did this guy get in touch with me? So I called him today. His name was Jamie Gilliam. I said, how did you get in touch with me? I cannot remember. I was like, I know you got in touch with me second semester at Mississippi State. He said, I think it was AOL Instant Messenger. I said, I think you're right. Because back then, spring of '99, if any of you remember that, AOL Instant Messenger, that was the way you talked to people. Everybody had AOL Instant Messenger. We all had screen names. That's how you talked to everybody. We kind of started emailing a little bit, but he reached out to me second semester at Mississippi State and said, aren't you at Mississippi State? I said, yeah, I'm at Mississippi State. He's like, I am too. I've been here since fall of last year. I hadn't seen you at church at all. I was like, no, you hadn't. He's like, you need to come part of the Starkville congregation. They got a great student center. And I was like, okay, I'll go. And him calling me got me to show up at the Starkville congregation for the first time. And from that point on, I got really, really involved in the student center there. All my friends from that point on were pretty much there in the student center. And at that point in my life, my faith was really, really struggling. That one, I was about to say phone call, but that one chat he sent me in the spring of '99 got me back in the door at the Starkville congregation. So Jamie had a big impact on my life. It was interesting. I hadn't talked to him in years. I called him this afternoon and told him that. I said, you know what? In the spring of '99, you helped my faith. It's like you probably never had any clue what a big impact you had on my life, because at that point I was lazy. I wasn't getting involved. You reached out to me, asked me what was going on, got me back in the door, and it had a huge impact on my life when I was 19 years old. So we chatted for about 15, 20 minutes today. But it was a good conversation. But that moment and him in my life, even though for him, we were really good friends for 5 or 6 years. But for him, that wasn't a big deal to him at the moment reaching out to me. But he didn't realize what a big impact that had on my life. Just, hey, where you been? Why haven't you been to the congregation there? So that was early on in Mississippi State. So we'll fast forward a little bit, about a year or so from that point. And the next person that had a big impact on my life was a guy named Greg Braswell. I hadn't talked to Greg in a long, long time. But I remember when Greg used to call me 250. He called me 250 all the time, talking about my weight. Which is funny, back then I weighed about 215. So 250 was kind of insulting to me. I'm pushing 300 now, so I would long for the days when people called me 250. And I was thinking back, I was like, yeah, he called me 250. I was like, man, I wish I was 250. But anyway, Greg had a big impact on my life, and I'll get into that in just a second. But so this was it was fall, I'm trying to get my dates right. This was fall of '99, so my second year at Mississippi State. So I started dating a girl. We dated almost a year. And the summer of 2000, she suddenly passed away. We've been dating almost a year. And she had heart disease. She didn't know she had heart disease. Nobody knew she had it. But it's something she had since she was born. But summer of 2000, she was down visiting her mom down in Ocean Springs, Mississippi. She suddenly passed away. So her sister had to call me and tell me what happened, and I was devastated. So obviously it was a really, really difficult time for me. I was 20 years old. So it's 25 years ago now. But I was 20 years old when it happened, and it was hard for me to kind of look back on those days, because it was, I'd say for a few months after it happened, I was in pretty rough shape. Mom and Dad could probably tell you more than I can even remember about that time. I think I just kind of don't think about it much anymore. But I know for a few months I was in really rough shape. But I remember, I'm not sure exactly when it was after that, but a few months after it happened, Greg Braswell reached out to me. I'd known him, I'd spoken to him before, but I had no type of relationship with this guy. He reached out to me. He was a few years older than me. And he said, hey, how you doing? And he meant it in a real way where I'm like, he actually cared how I was doing. I said, I'm okay. That was pretty much my standard answer for a long time. He said, why don't you come over to the house one night? And he was married, had kids already. He said, we'll just sit down and we'll talk a little while. I said, absolutely. So I showed up over at his house, and he just listened to me for a while, and he would talk to me. We started to develop this relationship, and I remember something special about Greg. We played sports together and stuff too, but every conversation we had, it always led to Jesus. Every time we talked about anything, no matter what we were talking about, we could be talking about college football, and somehow 10 minutes later, we'd be talking about our faith. And I remember one of his really good friends was an atheist, and he would come over all the time too. And I would just sit back and I would observe Greg and this guy talking, they were both really friendly, and they would have these conversations about their faith, and I would listen to the guy who was an atheist. I would listen to Greg talk, and I would learn a lot about it. And I kind of look back on that point in my life I was 20, almost 21 years old at that point. I look back at that point in my life, and I can say that that's when it became my own faith. For a long time, I've been living my faith because this is how I was raised. This is how my parents raised me. This is what I was taught to believe, right? I was taught to believe these certain things. And I felt like I believed them. But when I was 20, 21 years old, when I started listening to those discussions, when I started spending a lot of time with this guy, that's when my faith became my own. I had to kind of take a step back. That, in combination of my girlfriend dying and the impact that had on me, the conversations I was having with Greg and the conversations I was kind of witness to, that really forced me to develop my own faith. I had to figure out what I really believed. So Greg had a huge impact on my life. That was when I was 20, 21 years old. So I look back at that point and I look at the scripture, James chapter 1, verses 2 through 4. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. So I look back at all these moments in my life when maybe my faith was weak, or maybe some tragedy happens. Those are the moments in my life that I can say, because of this, even though it was a struggle for a while, my faith ended up growing even stronger in the outcome. And that's a big moment in my life where my faith was really, really challenged. For a long time, I had a lot of doubts. I was angry for a while. I didn't understand. And Greg is one of the big people in my life that I spent a lot of time with that helped me find my own faith and kind of develop that strength. So now we'll fast forward a little bit. So I didn't go back to school that next semester. That fall of 2000, I didn't go back to school. I stayed in Starkville, just worked full time. The next semester, I tried to go back and take a couple classes, and I didn't do very well. I still having a hard time focusing. Ended up going back to school a little bit the next semester, but that semester I decided I need a fresh start. I need to get out of Starkville. I need somewhere to go where I can just kind of start over, get a fresh start. So I decided at that point to transfer to Faulkner University in Montgomery. So this was summer of 2002. So when I tell people I was in college for 8 years, it took me a little while. But there was a few years there where I wasn't a good student. I wasn't going to classes, and then I was only going part-time. So I transferred to Faulkner in 2002. And so my major when I was at Mississippi State University was turf grass management. And I was majoring in turf grass management because I wanted to be superintendent of a golf course. That was my dream job when I realized the NFL wasn't going to work out. I was going to work on a golf course, and I told myself, I don't know what I want to do exactly, but I just don't want to be inside all day sitting in a computer. That's not what I want to do with my life. It's like I want to be outside in the open, in the grass. I love mowing and being outside. I worked on a golf course in high school and a little bit while I was at Mississippi State. So for those of you who don't know, I do IT now, so it still didn't work out the way I wanted, but I do still mow my own yard, so that I do get out every once in a while. So I transferred to Faulkner University, and my goal was to get school paid for. So I tried out for this quartet called Cornerstone. Some of you may have heard of Cornerstone, but I tried out for them in 2002. Did not make the group, so that was pretty tough for me. But I decided to go to Faulkner anyway. So spent a whole year at Faulkner, getting debt and taking out student loans. Tried out again the next year, and luckily the next year I did not make the group that year either. So back-to-back years did not make the group, so I'm just piling on student loans at that point. I was like, surely I'll make it next year, so somebody will pay for my school. So third year, tried out and finally made the group. So it was 2004 is when I started singing in Cornerstone. And singing in Cornerstone, transferred to Faulkner. That decision, although my parents weren't crazy about me going from Mississippi State to Faulkner at the time, they may not remember that part. They tried to talk me out of it, which was probably a smart thing to do coming from them, but ended up transferring anyway. Spent a couple of years. And the reason why it took me so long at Faulkner was because they did not have a good turf grass management program at Faulkner. There's only probably 4 or 5 universities in the country that offer that, so I had to swap over to business. So I had some classes like Plant Materials 1 and Plant Materials 2, and I think I had landscape architecture, I had a golf course architecture class, agricultural pest management. Took all these classes. None of them transferred for anything at Faulkner because I swapped over to a business management degree. So you can imagine that pest management didn't substitute for anything over there. So spent 4 more years at Faulkner trying to get a couple degrees. But anyway, I spent 2 years at Faulkner. I made the quartet my first year, or the third year, and the 4th year. So I did finally get my school paid for in my last 2 years. So what's interesting about that time in my life is, and while I was in Cornerstone, we used to travel all over the place. We used to go to summer camps and sing. We used to travel to Texas and Mississippi and Florida and Georgia, South Carolina. We even went to Iowa and sang some. There was a school that we always went to sing every spring. And I remember we used to make fun of the name of it because we really didn't know how to pronounce it. So we would go to this little school, we called it OU Achita. But every spring, we would go to OU Achita Christian School, and we would sing at chapel there, and we would recruit people to go to Faulkner and stuff like that. So we came to OU Achita in the spring of 2025 was the first time, and we sang there, and I was still kind of old, but we sang for the high school chapel and stuff there, and we sold our CDs and everything. And then we came back the next year and sang at OCS again, spring of 2026. And I didn't know the impact that would have on my life. I was singing at OCS a couple of years. But I graduated in 2026. And what? 2026? Well, everybody's laughing. So I knew I was funny, but I didn't even tell any jokes. I just assumed that I was really had the crowd with me. I don't even know what I said now. What year is it? 2025? 2005, 2000. I was wondering where everybody was laughing. Somebody's got to tell me something next time. I was already uncomfortable enough. Y'all really made it bad. I knew that there was something going on that I don't know about. 2005, 2006. Those are the 2 years that I sang at OCS. Y'all threw me all off tonight. What time is it? Graduated in 2006. I got out. I was working IT. I was working outside, working at a hospital, doing IT. Not at all what I was wanting to do. I don't know if many of y'all have heard of this, but there was this social media called MySpace. I won't go into all the details about MySpace, but we'll just say there was a lady that reached out to me on MySpace. She was from Monroe, Louisiana, and she'd gotten a hold of one of our CDs, our really amazing Cornerstone CDs. So she reached out to me just to ask me if I was still singing and what I was up to. We developed a little bit of a relationship and started talking back and forth and emailing back and forth, and then I started deciding, hey, I'm going to start looking for a job in Monroe, Louisiana, so I can move here to be with this girl. And so we started dating for a while, and it was Lauren Phil hadn't figured it out yet. She had gotten our CD from her younger sister, who was at OCS at the time, Lyndon, and that's how she got in touch with me. So singing at OCS back in 2005 and 2006, not 2025 and 2026. Lyndon got a hold of our CD, gave it to Lauren, and Lauren reached out to me on MySpace because neither one of us had MySpace accounts anymore. And we ended up moving here, getting a job at the end of CenturyTel, and moved here. We got married, and so that was another big move in my life. Is Cornerstone? All my outline says is Cornerstone OCS MySpace. So you can see how brief my outline is. I had to remember all that just from those 3 words. I did not put the years down here, unfortunately. So we got married in 2008. Get myself in trouble. I should have put those dates down here. We got married in 2008. We got married the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. So I'll always remember that. I just wish if Thanksgiving fell on the same day every year, which we talked about, it's on a Thursday every year, but Thanksgiving fell on the same day every year. It'd be easy to remember my anniversary, but it was the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. So moved here, and that kind of started the next big stage of my life. So even when I was at Faulkner in Montgomery, Alabama, I still struggled with my faith quite a bit. I kind of moved around going to different congregations and stuff, and I went, and I was there. I wasn't screwing up or anything or doing horrible stuff, but I was just kind of a lukewarm Christian is basically what I was. So got married, moved here, and Eva was 3 years old at the time, and that's when Lauren had a huge impact on my life. So what she did for me, we got married, and we were going to church in Farmville at the time. It's a good congregation in Farmville that we went to. When we got married, we became a family. She was the rock of our family, and still is. She is her example for me in making sure that we were at the church building, we were involved in the congregation, we were there when the doors were open. We weren't missing church for any reason. She was a huge impact on me when we got married, and a big part of that, us getting married, was realizing it's not just me anymore. It's my wife, it's my daughter. So it's not just about my faith anymore. It's not just about me, whether or not I'm getting up Sunday morning and going to church somewhere. It was about being an example for my family. It's about being there for my wife. It's about being there for my daughter and starting to set that legacy for my family and being the example to know that this is my priority. So I didn't know if this was going to take me 2 hours or 10 minutes. I wasn't really sure how long it was going to take me to go through this, but I think I got about 10 minutes left. So I'll talk just a little bit about our family and kind of the stuff that we've been through over the years and the things that kind of affected us. So when we first got married, Eva was still going back and forth to her dad's and stuff back then. And Laura and I were talking about the other night. And it was a struggle for our family. It was really, really tough not having her with us all the time. And so I think early on in our marriage for quite a few years, it was a struggle because of just the extra stuff that we're having to deal with and just constantly being concerned for her and trying to figure out a way to help Eva out and to kind of help get her in a situation that was better for her. So that was a big impact, and that was a struggle early on in our marriage dealing with that. I'll say once we got through that, it was huge, and once she started staying with us full time, it was a big impact for our family and really kind of helped stabilize our family. Look back at my notes real quick. No, so that was early on in our marriage with Eva. And the second part also deals with Eva. She asked me if I wanted her to stay in here tonight or go somewhere else tonight, which she had gone somewhere else now. But the second part involves Eva with coaching her over the years. So I started coaching her in softball when she was playing t-ball. And I played baseball growing up, but I didn't know much about coaching little girls in t-ball. But I tell you, little girls playing t-ball and coach pitch, they're a whole lot easier to coach than boys for sure. They're actually very coachable. I had a phenomenal t-ball team when I was coaching Eva. That's one thing about me, if you know me very well, is like when I do something, I'm going to try to do it as best I can. So we had, I look back on it now, it's kind of funny, but I coached her in t-ball. I coached the t-ball all-star team We got second place in district one year, went to state. The next year we won district, went to the state all-star tournament. So I'm coaching these little T-ball girls in the state all-star tournament. But we were all into it. I look back on those years and I'll think about how hardcore I was about coaching those T-ball girls in the state tournament that year. But I was even on the board at the East Washita Rec, and I was the T-ball representative on the softball board. So I was all in. But that kind of started my years with coaching, because I didn't know much about softball, or I didn't know anything about softball. Lauren played softball, but I was not softball, so I kind of had to learn it as I went with Eva and as I started coaching her. So I coached her in T-ball, I coached her in coach pitch one year, and somebody came to me and asked if I would wanted to coach a travel ball team. And I thought this was the greatest honor, for someone to ask me, because they realized that I knew what I was doing, when it came to coaching. They were not correct, but they thought I did at the time. So I started coaching a travel ball team. It was Eva's second year of 8U. She was playing coach pitch. So I coached 8U and I coached 10U. And after that, I was like, I can't do this anymore. I love the girls. I love coaching the girls, but the parents were awful. I was like, I can't deal with them anymore. I love coaching, but I don't like dealing with the parents. So I ended up stepping back, but Eva continued to play for quite a few more years. And we made the decision, I think she was 13 or 14, because at the time we'd been going to Jackson Street for a while, and some of you may not even realize we were going there. We've been going there close to 10 years now. But there was a while when she was playing, we weren't here very often. We were out of town. If we were out of town, we were always trying to go to church somewhere else. But we realized as she got older that we weren't really part of the congregation here. We came here when we were in town. We were out of town a lot. When we were out of town, we tried to go somewhere else, and we realized she was 12, 13, 14. This was going to be a critical moment for her in her life to be part of the congregation. And we were not setting a good example for her by not making being here a priority. We realized just being here every once in a while was not the same as being dug into the congregation here. So we made a decision. I say we, it was mainly Lauren that said, this is what we need to do. And I said, that's right, that's what we need to do. So we stepped back and said, no more travel ball. We are going to dig into the congregation of Jackson Street. We're going to be all in. And so at that point, we gave it up. And that's the first go. I still got 21 minutes. And so we gave it up. We dug in here at Jackson Street, and that was one of the best decisions we ever made. I think it was, we dug in, we started showing up here whenever the doors were open, we were here. Even got involved in a youth group, because we'd really just kind of been on the outside looking in for years. And I think it was just maybe a year later that she got baptized. And I don't know how likely that would have happened if we would have stepped away and got more involved here. So that's kind of been something that I've been pushing over the last few years with a lot of people that are big into sports, big into playing different sports and stuff. And that's kind of taking priority over showing up to church and stuff like that. It's like, although you may be showing up, if you're not really dug into a congregation, you're missing out. And it doesn't matter what you say to your kids a lot of times. It doesn't matter what you tell them what your priority is. You got to show them what your priority is. So Lauren and I both realized we have to show our kids, not just talk about our faith, but show them we're going to be here, we're going to get involved. This is our main priority. Being here, being part of this family, Jackson Street. This is our main priority. Everything else we do is secondary to this. So we made that decision. It's made a huge impact on our lives. Getting involved here, because now I look back, it's like I don't know what we did before we had this family here and the group of friends and stuff we have here. But that was a big decision for us. I guess that was now 4 or 5 years ago. So since then, we started getting a lot more involved here. So that was a big decision that we made as a family. I think I'm getting close to the end. So, yeah, so that was a big impact. That was 4 or 5 years ago. And we look back at today, and I've talked about Andrew a few times. So Andrew and I have gotten pretty close over the last few years. That's the second bell, isn't it? But I'll just finish it up and say, just a big thank you to Jackson Street, because you guys are a part of the story, part of my story about my faith and kind of how my faith has developed over the years. Being part of this family, just about everybody I talk to and spend time with is here. So y'all are a big impact on my life, and I appreciate y'all. And thank y'all for letting me speak. Thanks again, Andrew, for giving me this growth opportunity.